This video is for people who are new to hiking and aren't sure what to take on a day hike. In part 1 of this video, I'll review what I carry, and in part 2, which comes later, I'll discuss what I wear. In remote parts of New Mexico, I have to consider the following. Water is rare, and because of the dry climate, dehydration is a constant threat. On most days, the sunshine is fierce and easily causes sunburn and long-term skin damage. Whatever the forecast says, the weather can go from beautiful to awful in minutes. I'm often in poorly traveled areas with no cell coverage and can't depend on quick help. If I do get hurt or lost and manage to call for help, that help won't arrive for hours, possibly not until the next day, so there's a chance I'll be out there overnight. What works where you are is likely to be different, and that's fine as long as you're prepared for every condition you may face. Let's start with my pack. No brand loyalty here. It's something I picked up at REI because it's the right size and has side pockets and I can afford it. I hate hydration bags, so easy access to water bottles is a must. This pack is for light loads only, about 20 pounds or 9 kilos at most. For heavier loads I use a larger pack with a hip belt, which takes a lot of strain off my back. I rely on a GPS unit to navigate. It's battery powered, so I always take extra batteries. Also, when I don't need it, I turn it off to save the batteries. I always take along a map and compass as a backup in case my GPS dies. I have the training to understand what a GPS or map and compass are telling me. If I'm in trouble, I can use my cell phone to call for help. That's assuming I haven't used up the battery. So I start each hike with a fully charged cell phone, and mostly it's off as I hike. That saves the battery for an emergency, but it also lets me unplug from society and focus on nature. In the hills of New Mexico, it's easy to lack cell coverage, so I take along a satellite communicator. Mostly I leave it on tracking mode, so someone can see where I am. If I get in trouble and there's no cell coverage, I can use the communicator to send out an SOS. I can also link the communicator to my cell phone to text or navigate, but usually I don't bother. At this point you may be thinking, that's a lot of redundancy, and it is, but if you carry 2 ways to navigate instead of just one, you're more prepared if things start going wrong. For hikers, redundancy is always a good idea. As you acquire gear, look at it and ask yourself, if this fails, what would I do instead? If you don't have an answer, you should come up with one. On every hike I take along a headlamp and extra batteries. That way, if I'm not back at the trailhead by dark, I can keep on hiking. This looks bad, doesn't it? Actually, it was a minor injury. When you're in the wilds, you can face a lot worse. And if this is your idea of a first aid kit, your plan for a serious injury is to depend on the kindness of strangers. Not a good idea if you won't see anyone else all day. With this first aid kit, how will you treat a compound fracture? What if your knife slips and you slice open a finger? Here's my first aid kit. I have an extensive supply of small stuff plus an ace bandage and a lightweight splint. The stuff inside the kit will let me take care of fairly serious injuries. You can't do that with a few band-aids. The kit also includes matches, a tea light wrapped in foil, nail clippers, and a small sewing kit. I've been stuck outside on a cold, wet night, so I always carry these. The Bic gives me multiple tries at starting a fire. The lightning nugget will burn for several minutes, so if the available tinder is damp, I should still be able to get a fire going. Did you notice that I mentioned 2 ignition sources? That's right, I take along a lighter plus the matches in my first aid kit. If I'm stuck outside overnight and get a fire going, I can use this emergency blanket to reflect heat onto myself. If I can't get a fire going, the foil blanket will at least keep the wind and rain off. I always carry toilet paper plus a lightweight trowel for digging a poop hole. I like to have 50 feet of paracord in my pack for everything from rigging a shelter to fixing broken gear. Every hiker should carry a whistle in case they get in trouble. If I'm shouting for help, I'll quickly go hoarse, but a whistle keeps on working. The lip balm is for my lips, of course, but it's good for other things such as starting a fire. You need a knife on a hike, but you don't need a pig sticker, just something lightweight. I recommend a lockback knife so you don't accidentally snap the blade closed on your fingers the way I did once. If you drop your knife, it can be hard to find, but a length of bright cord makes it stand out in the weeds. I always have about a yard of duct tape with me. You can see some camo duct tape wrapped around the bottle. A quart Gatorade bottle such as this one is 3.5 inches in diameter, so once around gives you about 11 inches of tape. 3.5 times around gives you a generous yard. By the way, if you shred duct tape, you can use it as tinder. I wish every hiker would take along a large trash bag like this one. That way, when you encounter garbage left by someone thoughtless, you can collect it for disposal after the hike. Many hikers know the principle that if you pack it in, you need to pack it out. But some people don't care, so it's up to the rest of us to pack out more than we packed in. You can take great pictures with a cell phone these days, but a separate camera lets you do even better. I keep mine in a padded pouch on my belt so I can get to it quickly. A good camera lets you take a picture like this one of a snoozing porcupine high in a tree. As long as I'm taking a good camera, I also take a tripod. For easy hikes with great views, I have a light but full-sized tripod. If I want to be more careful with weight, I have a Joby GorillaPod. The older and wobblier I get, the more I appreciate hiking poles. In the past few years, they've saved me from a dozen or more serious falls. On easier hikes, I'll take just one, but for rougher terrain, I'll use 2. I could stash my poles in my pack until they're actually needed, and this photo shows how. I place the handle of the collapsed pole in one of my side pockets and secure it higher up with a Velcro loop clipped to the top of the pack. If I dedicate a side pocket in this way, I can carry both poles and my full-sized camera tripod in a small day pack. This picture is from a recent hike. In New Mexico we have black bears, and their usual response to hikers is to disappear, but very rarely they attack, mainly if you stumble into them or get between a mother and her cubs. I hike a lot in bear country, so I use a bear bell. I also take bear spray. Chances are I'll never use the spray, but I feel safer having it. My trail lunch changes from time to time, but right now it includes a sandwich and some combination of jerky, trail mix, nuts, Larabars, and fig Newtons. The main thing to remember is to always take more food than you'll use that day, so you have something to eat if you get stuck overnight. In New Mexico, water is a big deal. My minimum load of fluids is 2 quarts. Often I have a quart of Gatorade and a quart of plain water. I used to use Nalgene bottles because they're almost indestructible, but now I mostly use old Gatorade bottles because they're also pretty tough. For a long hot hike where there's no water, I take more than 2 quarts. If there's water, I take a filter so I can refill my water bottles. Again, I'm thinking in terms of possibly being stranded overnight. That covers the things I always take along. I may add other gear depending on the hike. For example, I may use this old poncho as a ground cloth so my hiking buddies and I can have lunch without getting our butts wet. If the hike is way out there and the weather could be really bad, I may pack along a lightweight tarp and a few tent stakes. With a setup like this, a couple of hikers could wait out an all-night storm. Or I can rig the tarp as an awning so the group can enjoy a dry lunch in a drizzle. In this case, the hike was so easy that I rigged a hammock under the tarp and took a siesta. Not every hike needs to be about distance versus time. And with that, we're finally done. I'm definitely not an ultralighter, but past mistakes have taught me to err on the side of caution. I'd rather carry more gear than be lost, hungry, thirsty, wet, and cold all at once. If you have any questions or comments about my gear, please post them and I'll do my best to answer. Thank you for watching.